James Franklin yesterday.
I think there's been conversations about, obviously you talk about just the differences between our two programs and conferences. I think it should be consistent across college football. I think, again, this is no knock at Coach or Notre Dame, but I think everybody should be in a conference. I think everybody should play a conference championship game, or no one should play a conference championship game.
Yeah, the non-conference situation is unique, to say the least. Elle, what's your reaction to what James Franklin just said, though?
I mean, we came into the season knowing this would be the case. I think I'm reading between the lines here. I think what James Franklin is upset about is that everybody else has to split that $14 million that they're getting in incentives for being in the postseason with their respective conferences, and Notre Dame gets that $14 million because they are independent. Now, I understand that, because in an NIL world, were you looking at me like that? Correct.
So Notre Dame gets all 14 and then
Yes.
they have to share it with the other teams that make it, or no?
So how is that fair?
Yes, they get $14 million that they get to keep. The other teams have to share that money with their respective conferences. So like Texas is incentivized because the SEC doesn't incentivize base, so they'll make like $3.2 million. Notre Dame gets to keep all that $14 million. That is significant, and I understand, especially in an NIL world, because that is significant improvements to your roster and the ability to bring in some big talent. But I will counter with this. Notre Dame, every single year, because they're an independent, enters with a disadvantage. They are never going to be eligible for a bye, at least currently as this expansion sits, right? Which means that no matter what, they could go undefeated next year. They are still going to have to win 4 games to be national champions. And so I think there is a little bit of a counter in that Notre Dame does have a disadvantage in that way as well. To me, James Franklin's upset about the money. I get it. I get you. But to do that up there at the press conference with Marcus sitting next to you just felt a little.
I had no problem with it. And the reason I had no problem with it is because Marcus Freeman represents the football team.
Sure.
Okay, of Notre Dame, but he's not an administrator. He's not a chancellor. He's not a university president. He doesn't have much to do. He doesn't have anything to do with Notre Dame being an independent. So let's get that out the way first. Number two, if I'm James Franklin, the one thing that I would hesitate to bring up about conferences is that Mr. Franklin himself, who I like a lot, he has a 4-16 record against conference foes in Ohio State and Michigan. I'm just saying, the man's 4-16 against Ohio State and Michigan. Okay, it's just the truth.
It's a receipt.
It's just the truth. Okay, so we got to. You sure you want to bring up conferences? You might want to dive down that subject just a little bit.
That guy's playing in the biggest game of his life tonight.
Yeah, biggest game of his life. You understand what I'm saying? There's a few coaches, this wouldn't be the biggest game of their life because they've been there already. You see what I'm saying? But that's neither here nor there. I'm rooting for him. I think he's going to win tonight. But I will tell you, I get where he's coming from. But Notre Dame, it's like their fan base is big. There is no doubt about that. And I have often lamented, how do they get away with not being a part of a conference? Why the hell have they had a TV deal for decades, for crying out loud? I mean, when I think about Notre Dame and I think about the national championship picture, this is the first time in Irons that I've thought about it. Even when they were in the national championship game against Alabama years ago, I knew they were going to get ramrodded. I was like, it's a nice season. It's a nice season. But you're about to get stomped on national television in a national title game tonight, and that was a beatdown. You understand? So you're not really looking at Notre Dame like that. This is the first time in a while you've looked at them this way. I get where he's coming from. You might not have been necessary, but I don't think it's a big deal that he's answering a reporter's question as it pertains to something like that.
Yeah, I agree with James Franklin. I think there needs to be at least something that resembles uniformity in college football right now, because we have very little, if any of it. Yeah. Conferences aren't the same, though. So if they join a conference, what conference is it going to be? You know, there's Power 4, and then there's really Power 2, you know, if we're being candid.
Well, don't they caucus with the ACC?
Well, hey,
right?
but what I'm saying is this. You might want to be in a weekend. You want to remain independent. Some people would argue being in the ACC is the equivalent to being an independent.
You know what?
They might do that.
Yo, why are you taking shots at so many people?
I'm saying if Notre Dame was in the ACC, you know, they might look at it that way.
I
got one for you real quick, Molly. Yeah. The last time Notre Dame won a major bowl game.
1980.
But what was the number? What was the number 1 movie that year?
Teen Wolf.
The Lion King. It was 1994.
The original.
The original Lion King.
Not the new one with Beyonce. Yeah.
No.